The sun hung low over Redemption Creek, painting the dusty main street in shades of copper and blood. Jack Calloway stood outside the Silver Spur Saloon, his shadow stretching long across the weathered planks of the boardwalk. He'd ridden 3 days to get here, through alkali flats that could crack a man's soul as easily as they cracked the earth, and he wasn't leaving without what he'd come for. The saloon doors swung open, and a thin man in a bowler hat stumbled out, took one look at Jack's face, and hurried in the opposite direction. Smart man. Jack could feel the weight of eyes on him from every window on the street. Word travelled fast in towns like this. They knew who he was, knew what he'd come for, and not a single one of them would lift a finger to stop him. That's how it worked out here. You paid your debts, or someone like Jack Calloway came to collect. He pushed through the swinging doors. The saloon fell silent, except for the tinny sound of an out-of-tune piano that stopped mid-note. 20 pairs of eyes turned to watch him. Jack's boots echoed on the wooden floor as he crossed to the bar, his spurs jingling with each step. The bartender, a barrel-chested man with a scar running from his temple to his jaw, set down the glass he'd been polishing. "Help you, mister." "Madame Delacroix, where is she?" The bartender's eyes flicked toward the stairs, then back to Jack. "She ain't receiving visitors today." Jack placed both hands on the bar, leaning forward. "I ain't a visitor. I'm a debt collector, and Madame Delacroix owes my employer $15,000, 3 months overdue." A murmur rippled through the room. 15,000 was more money than most of these men would see in a lifetime. "Look, friend," the bartender said, his voice dropping low, "the madame, she's had some troubles lately. She ain't in a position to—" "That ain't my concern." Jack straightened up. "You gonna tell me which room, or am I gonna have to tear this place apart?" The bartender swallowed hard. "Top of the stairs, 3rd door on the right. But mister, I'm telling you, she can't—" Jack was already moving. He took the stairs 2 at a time, his hand resting on the Colt at his hip. Not because he expected trouble. A woman alone couldn't give him much, but because 20 years on the frontier had taught him that expectations were a good way to get killed. The 3rd door on the right was painted red, with gold lettering that read, "Private." Jack didn't bother knocking. He turned the handle and pushed it open. The room beyond was surprisingly elegant. Velvet curtains, a 4-poster bed with a canopy, a vanity cluttered with perfume bottles and jewelry, and there, in a wheelchair by the window, sat Madame Delacroix. She wasn't what he'd expected. Jack had collected from Saloon Madames before. Hard women with painted faces and harder eyes, women who'd claw and spit and curse before they gave up a single cent. But Madame Delacroix looked almost fragile, her auburn hair streaked with grey, her face pale and drawn. She wore a green silk dress that had seen better days, and a shawl draped over her lap. She turned to look at him, and her eyes, green as creek water, widened with fear. "Who are you? How dare you—" "Name's Calloway. Jack Calloway. I work for Augustus Thornton out of Denver. You know why I'm here." The colour drained from her face. "Please," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please, you have to understand. I was going to pay him back, I was, but there was an accident. I can't walk anymore. The doctor bills, they took everything. I don't have the money." Jack had heard every excuse in the book. Sick relatives, failed investments, robberies, fires. People got creative when they owed money. He pulled a piece of paper from his vest pocket and unfolded it. "Says here you borrowed $15,000 6 months ago. Terms were clear. Repayment in 3 months, 20% interest. That makes it $18,000 now." I know what I owe." She gripped the arms of her wheelchair, knuckles white. "But I'm telling you the truth. Look at me. I can't even stand. I fell down those stairs out there 2 months ago. Broke my back. The doctor says I'll never walk again." Jack folded the paper and put it back in his pocket. He'd learned not to let sob stories get to him. Sympathy was a luxury he couldn't afford. "That's unfortunate, ma'am, but it don't change the facts. You borrowed the money. You gotta pay it back." "With what?" Her voice rose, desperate now. "The saloon barely makes enough to keep the doors open. I've sold everything of value. I don't have $18,000. I don't have $1,800. Then we got a problem. Jack looked around the room. The jewelry on the vanity might fetch a few hundred. The furniture, another 100 or two if he could find a buyer. Not nearly enough. Thornton don't like it when people don't pay. He sent me to collect the debt one way or another. Please. Tears were streaming down her face now. Please, don't hurt me. I can't walk. I can't defend myself. If you take what little I have left, I'll starve. The girls who work here will starve, will lose everything. Jack stood there, looking at this broken woman in her wheelchair, and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Doubt. He'd collected from widows and orphans, from farmers who'd lost everything to drought, and merchants who'd gambled away their livelihoods. He'd learned to shut out their pleas, to focus on the job. Money owed was money owed, and the world didn't run on sympathy. But something about this felt different. Maybe it was the wheelchair, maybe it was the genuine terror in her eyes, or maybe he was just getting old, getting soft. "Tell me about the accident," he said finally. She looked up at him, surprised. "What?" "The accident. How'd it happen?" She wiped her eyes with a trembling hand. "There was a fight. 2 cowboys arguing over one of my girls. They crashed into me at the top of the stairs. I fell all the way to the bottom, broke 3 vertebrae. Doctor said I was lucky to be alive. These cowboys, they pay for the doctor bills?" A bitter laugh escaped her lips. "They rode out of town the same night. Never saw them again." Jack walked to the window and looked out at the street below. The sun was touching the horizon now, setting the whole sky on fire. Down below, people were lighting lamps, settling in for the evening. A normal day in a normal town, everyone with their own problems, their own debts. "How much can you pay?" he asked. "What? Right now? How much cash you got?" She hesitated. "Maybe $200, that's everything. Every cent we have. $200 against a debt of $18,000. Thornton would laugh in his face, might even dock his pay for coming back with so little. But Jack had been thinking, and a plan was forming in his mind. "The saloon," he said. "It's in your name." "Yes, but how much does it make in a good month?" "Before the accident, we'd clear maybe $500–600. Now, maybe half that." Jack did the math in his head. If the saloon was pulling in $300 a month and he could get it back up to its previous earnings, that was $6,000 a year. Not enough to pay off $18,000 quickly, but it was something. "Here's what we're gonna do," he said, turning to face her. "You're gonna sign over 49% ownership of the Silver Spur to Augustus Thornton. I'm gonna stay here and run the place, get it back to making real money. Every month we'll send Thornton his share of the profits until the debt is paid, with interest." She stared at him. You're going to run my saloon?" "That's right. I know this business. Did it for 5 years before I started collecting debts. I can turn this place around. But that could take years, 5 years, maybe more. Better than the alternative, Ma'am, and you get to keep the place when it's done. Sign it over now, and I'd have to haul you to Denver to face Thornton personally. Trust me, you don't want that." She studied his face for a long moment. "Why are you doing this?" Good question. Jack wasn't entirely sure himself. Maybe he was tired of being the villain in everyone's story. Maybe he saw something in this woman, some echo of his own mother, who'd run a boarding house after his father died and worked herself to death trying to keep food on the table. Or maybe he just wanted to believe that there was still some way to do this job without crushing what little hope people had left. "Because I think you're telling the truth," he said finally. "And because Thornton wants his money, not your misery. This way, everyone gets what they need." She was quiet for a long time. Then, slowly, she nodded. "All right. I'll do it. But I want to keep final say on the girls who work here. I won't have them mistreated." "Fair enough. And I want your word that you'll deal honestly with me. No skimming, no cheating the books." Jack extended his hand. "You got it, ma'am." She took his hand, her grip surprisingly strong despite her frail appearance. "My name is Evangeline Delacroix, not ma'am. Jack Calloway, as I said. Pleased to make your acquaintance, Evangeline." The next morning, Jack stood behind the bar of the Silver Spur, taking stock. The place was in worse shape than he'd thought. Half the tables were broken, the piano was held together with wire and hope, and the whole building smelled like stale beer and yesterday's regrets. But he'd worked with less. "All right, listen up," he called out. The girls and the few employees had gathered in the main room, watching him with suspicious eyes. "Things are going to change around here. First off, we're going to clean this place from top to bottom. I want every floor scrubbed, every window washed, every stick of furniture that's broken either fixed or thrown out." A blonde girl in a faded red dress raised her hand. "Who's going to pay for new furniture?" "We are. Out of the profits, which means everyone's gonna have to work a little harder until we get back on our feet." "And if we don't want to?" This from a tall woman with dark hair piled high on her head. "Madame Evangeline always treated us fair. You come in here, start giving orders." "Madame Evangeline is still the owner," Jack interrupted. "I'm just here to manage the place, get it making money again. She's agreed to this arrangement, and if you don't believe me, you can ask her yourself." He pointed to the stairs, where Evangeline sat in her wheelchair at the top, looking down at them. She nodded. "It's true, girls. Mr. Calloway is here to help. We need this if we're going to survive." The dark-haired woman didn't look convinced, but she backed down. Jack spent the rest of the day working alongside the employees, scrubbing floors and hauling out broken furniture. By sunset, the place looked better than it had in months. They'd found an old sign in the back room, hand-painted with the saloon's name, and Jack had hung it out front where everyone could see it. That night, they opened for business as usual. Jack worked the bar, pouring drinks and making small talk with the customers. He'd forgotten how much he enjoyed this. The rhythm of it, the way a good bartender could read a room and know when to joke and when to listen. Around midnight, 3 men pushed through the doors. They were cowboys, judging by their dusty clothes and the way they carried themselves, but there was something off about them. They moved like predators, their eyes scanning the room with calculation rather than curiosity. Jack's hand drifted toward the scattergun he'd placed under the bar. The tallest of the 3, a man with a black beard and cold blue eyes, approached the bar. "Whiskey, and one for my friends." Jack poured 3 glasses and set them on the bar. 2 bits each. The man tossed a silver dollar on the bar, then leaned forward. "Heard there's a new man running this place." "That's right. Heard Madame Delacroix is having some financial troubles. She's managing." The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "See, that's interesting, because we heard she owes a lot of money to some very dangerous people. Seems like a vulnerable time for a saloon. Accidents happen, you know, fires, robberies. Would be a shame if something happened to this place." Jack set down the bottle he'd been holding. "You threatening me?" "Just making an observation. But you know, my associates and I, we could provide protection, keep the bad elements away, for a reasonable fee, of course." So that's how it was. Protection racket. Probably the same men who'd been bleeding Evangeline dry before he arrived. "Here's an observation for you," Jack said quietly. "I don't pay for protection. And if anything happens to this saloon, anything at all, I'm going to assume it was you 3. And then I'm going to come find you." The bearded man's smile faded. "You don't know who you're dealing with?" "Name's Jack Calloway. Ask around. You'll find out I'm not a man who makes empty threats." The 3 men exchanged glances. The bearded one picked up his whiskey, drained it in one gulp, and slammed the glass down on the bar. "We'll see about that." They left, and Jack watched them go through the window. This was going to be a problem. He'd need to hire some muscle, men he could trust to watch the place when he couldn't be here. And he'd need to send a message, make it clear that the Silver Spur wasn't easy prey anymore. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, he had a saloon to run. 3 weeks later, Jack stood in Evangeline's room, showing her the ledger. "We're up 30% from when I got here. Word's spreading that the Silver Spur is under new management. We're getting a better class of customer." Evangeline studied the numbers, her fingers tracing down the columns. "This is good, Jack. Better than I hoped. We're not out of the woods yet. The protection racket came back twice. I ran them off both times, but they're getting bolder. Sooner or later, they're gonna try something. Then we hire guards. With what money? Every spare cent needs to go toward the debt." She looked up at him, her green eyes thoughtful. "You're not what I expected, Mr. Calloway." "How's that?" "When you first walked through that door, I thought you were just another thug, a man who hurt people for money. But you've been kind to my girls. You work harder than anyone else here. You're trying to build something, not just tear it down." Jack shifted uncomfortably. Compliments made him uneasy. "I'm just doing my job." "No, you're doing more than that." She closed the ledger. "I need to tell you something about the debt." "What about it?" "It wasn't for the saloon. I didn't borrow that money to improve the business or buy property." Jack frowned. "Then what was it for?" "My daughter." The words came out barely above a whisper. She was sick. Consumption. The doctors in Denver said they might be able to help her, but the treatment was expensive, $15,000 expensive. So I borrowed the money from Thornton. "Did it work?" Evangeline's face crumpled. "She died 3 weeks after I brought her home. The treatment failed, and I was left with nothing but a debt I couldn't pay and a saloon that was falling apart." Jack didn't know what to say. In his years as a debt collector, he'd heard countless stories, but most of them were excuses, lies designed to elicit sympathy. This was different. This was real grief, the kind that hollowed you out from the inside. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I truly am. That's why I couldn't walk away. This saloon, it's all I have left of her. She loved this place, loved watching the girls get ready for the evening, loved the music and the laughter. If I lose it, I lose her all over again." Jack pulled up a chair and sat down across from her. "You're not gonna lose it. I promise you that. We'll get through this." She wiped her eyes. "Why do you care? You could have just taken what you could and left. Why stay?" It was a question Jack had been asking himself. The easy answer was that it made good business sense, that Thornton would get his money this way. But the truth was more complicated. "I had a sister once," he said. "Consumption took her too. I was 15. We couldn't afford the medicine. I watched her waste away over 6 months, and there wasn't a damn thing I could do about it. I'm sorry. After she died, my mother tried to keep the boarding house going, but her heart wasn't in it. She died a year later. Just gave up. The bank took everything. I ended up on the streets." He'd never told anyone that story before. It felt strange, saying it out loud after all these years. "That's why you became a debt collector," Evangeline said. "You wanted to be on the other side. The one with the power." "Maybe. Or maybe I just wanted to make sure I'd never be that helpless kid again, watching everything fall apart." He stood up. "Either way, I'm here now, and I'm not leaving until this debt is paid and you're back on your feet. That's a promise." The trouble came on a Friday night. Jack was closing up, counting the till, while the last customers stumbled out into the night. The girls had already gone upstairs, and the bartender had left an hour ago. It was just Jack and the late-night silence. He heard the glass break before he saw the flames. The Molotov cocktail crashed through the front window, spraying burning kerosene across the floor. Within seconds, the whole front of the saloon was ablaze. Jack grabbed the bucket of sand they kept behind the bar and threw it on the flames, but it was like trying to stop a flood with a teaspoon. "Fire!" he shouted. "Everyone out! Fire!" He heard screaming from upstairs. Jack ran to the staircase, but the flames were already climbing the walls, blocking his path. The smoke was getting thicker, making it hard to breathe, hard to see. "Jack!" It was Evangeline's voice, terrified, coming from above. "Jack, help us!" There was another staircase in the back, the one Evangeline had fallen down. Jack ran through the smoke, coughing, his eyes watering. He took the back stairs 3 at a time, bursting into the upper hallway. The girls were there, helping each other toward the stairs, but Evangeline was still in her room. Jack could see her through the open door, struggling to move her wheelchair toward the exit. "Go!" he shouted to the girls. "Get out! I'll get Evangeline!" He ran into her room. The smoke was worse up here, and he could hear the roar of the flames below. They had minutes at best. "I can't move it," Evangeline gasped. "The wheel's stuck." Jack didn't hesitate. He scooped her up in his arms, ignoring her startled cry. She was lighter than he expected, too light. He'd been so focused on saving the business that he hadn't noticed how thin she'd become. "Hold on to me," he said. She wrapped her arms around his neck, and Jack carried her out of the room, down the back stairs. The smoke was everywhere now, and he could feel the heat of the flames on his face. His lungs burned. Black spots danced in his vision. He stumbled out the back door and into the alley, gasping for air. The girls were there, safe, watching as the Silver Spur burned. Someone had already formed a bucket brigade, but it was too late. The whole building was engulfed. Jack set Evangeline down gently, then collapsed to his knees, coughing. His throat felt like he'd swallowed hot coals. "Please, don't hurt me. I can't walk." Evangeline had begged him that first day. But Jack hadn't listened to her excuses, her pleas. He'd stayed, and because he'd stayed, she was alive. They were all alive. "Is everyone out?" he managed to ask. The dark-haired girl did a head count. "Everyone's here. We're okay." Jack watched the Silver Spur burn. All that work, all that progress, gone in a matter of minutes. And he knew who'd done it. Those 3 cowboys, the protection racket. They'd made good on their threat. "Mr. Calloway." The sheriff appeared, his face grim. "You all right?" "Been better." "Anyone hurt?" "No, everyone got out." The sheriff nodded. "That's good. That's real good." He looked at the burning building. "You got any idea who did this?" Jack told him about the 3 cowboys, the threats, the protection money they'd demanded. The sheriff listened, his expression darkening. "I know who you're talking about, Dalton Gang. They've been trouble for a while, but we never had proof. This is different, though. This is attempted murder. Where can I find them?" "Now, hold on. You leave this to the law." "Sheriff, with all due respect, the law didn't stop my saloon from burning down. Where are they?" The sheriff hesitated, then sighed. "They got a hideout about 5 miles north, Old McCready Place. But Calloway, there's 3 of them and 1 of you. Don't be a fool." Jack stood up. His lungs still burned, and his clothes were covered in soot, but his mind was clear. He'd come to Redemption Creek to collect a debt. Instead, he'd found something worth protecting, something worth fighting for. "Evangeline," he said, "I need to borrow your gun." She looked up at him from where she sat on the ground, her face pale in the firelight. "What are you going to do?" "What I should have done weeks ago. End this." "Don't." Her voice was firm. "Don't throw your life away for revenge. We're alive. That's what matters." "It ain't revenge. It's justice. And if I don't do this now, they'll just come back. They'll hurt someone else. Maybe kill someone next time." He could see her struggling with it, the fear and the anger warring in her eyes. Finally, she nodded. "My room. Top drawer of the nightstand. Smith & Wesson, 38, fully loaded." "Your room just burned down." "Then I guess you'll have to go get it." Jack looked at the burning building. The back half hadn't collapsed yet. If he was fast, if he was lucky. "Jack, no," one of the girls said. "It's not worth it." But he was already moving. He wrapped his bandana around his face and ran back into the burning building. The heat was incredible, like standing inside an oven. He could barely see through the smoke. He found the staircase, climbed up through air that seemed to be made of fire. The hallway was an inferno, but Evangeline's room was at the back, away from the worst of it. The door was open. He found the nightstand, yanked open the drawer. The gun was there, just like she'd said. He grabbed it, along with a box of ammunition, and ran. The ceiling was collapsing as he made it back to the stairs. A beam crashed down behind him, sending up a shower of sparks. He took the stairs 4 at a time, dove through the back door, and rolled in the dirt. The girls were cheering, helping him up. Evangeline was crying and smiling at the same time. "You damn fool," she said. "You beautiful damn fool." Jack checked the gun, 6 rounds. He had another dozen in his own Colt, and the extra ammunition from Evangeline's nightstand, more than enough. "Sheriff," he said, "I'm going to need a horse." The McCready place was a wreck of a homestead, long abandoned. Jack left his borrowed horse a 1/4 mile away and approached on foot, moving slow and quiet through the darkness. The moon was nearly full, giving him just enough light to see by. He could see lights in the windows, heard voices, laughter. They were celebrating, probably thought they'd run him out of town for good. They were wrong. Jack circled around to the back of the house. There was a window with a broken shutter, and through it he could see into what had once been a kitchen. The 3 cowboys were there, passing a bottle between them. "Did you see it burn?" the bearded one was saying. "Went up like kindling." "Should have heard those whores screaming," another one laughed. That was enough. Jack kicked in the back door and came through with both guns drawn. "Don't move!" The 3 men froze, hands reaching for their weapons. "I wouldn't," Jack said. "I'm fast enough to put all 3 of you down before you clear leather." The bearded one's eyes narrowed. "Calloway, thought you'd be dead by now. Disappointed? How'd you find us?" "Sheriff told me. Whole town knows where you hide. They just didn't have proof you were doing anything wrong. Until tonight. You got no proof it was us." "Don't need proof. I know it was you, and that's enough." The bearded man smiled. "So what? You gonna shoot us, gun us down in cold blood? That ain't exactly legal. Neither is burning down a building with people inside. Tell you what, though, I'll give you the same chance you gave those women. I'm gonna light this place on fire, and you can try to get out. We'll see how you like it." "You're bluffing." Maybe he was. Jack had killed before, but always in self-defense, always when he had no choice. Could he really burn these men alive? He thought of Evangeline's face in the firelight, the terror in her eyes, thought of the girls screaming as the flames climbed the walls, thought of all the people these men had hurt, all the lives they'd ruined with their threats and their violence. "Try me," Jack said. The bearded man's hand twitched toward his gun. Jack fired. The bullet took him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He dropped his weapon and clutched the wound, screaming. The other 2 went for their guns, and Jack fired twice more. One went down with a bullet in his leg. The other stumbled back, dropping his weapon. "Next one goes through your head," Jack said. "Now kick those guns over here." They did. Jack gathered them up, keeping his own weapons trained on the men. The bearded one was still cursing, blood seeping between his fingers. "You're done in this territory," Jack said. "Sheriff's gonna lock you up for attempted murder. You'll hang, most likely. But before that happens, I want you to know something. The Silver Spur, we're gonna rebuild it, bigger and better than before, and there ain't nothing you can do to stop it." He heard horses coming up the road. The sheriff, finally catching up. Jack had bought enough time for the law to do its job. It took 9 months to rebuild the Silver Spur. They worked from dawn to dusk, every day. The whole town pitched in, wanting to be part of the resurrection. Even some of the local ranchers donated lumber and labor. Jack supervised the construction, making sure every board was straight, every nail driven true. They didn't just rebuild the old saloon. They improved it, added a stage for performances, a better kitchen, guest rooms upstairs that were actually comfortable. Evangeline watched it all from her wheelchair, offering suggestions, managing the finances. She'd been right about the ledgers. Jack didn't skim a single cent. Every dollar was accounted for, every expense documented. The day they reopened, the place was packed. Cowboys and miners, merchants and farmers, all coming to see the new Silver Spur. The piano player they'd hired could actually play, and the girls wore new dresses that Evangeline had designed herself. Jack stood behind the bar, pouring drinks and taking in the scene. It felt good, this. Felt right. "Quite a celebration," Evangeline said. She'd wheeled herself over to the bar, looking more alive than he'd seen her in months. She'd put on weight, gotten some color back in her cheeks. "You've earned it," Jack said. "We've earned it." She reached across the bar and took his hand. "I never thanked you properly for that night, for carrying me out of the fire. No thanks needed. Yes, there is. And there's something else I need to say." She took a deep breath. "The debt. I've been running the numbers, and at the rate we're making money now, we'll have it paid off in 3 years. Maybe less. That's good news." "It is. But when it's paid off, what will you do? Go back to collecting debts?" Jack had been wondering the same thing. 3 years ago, hell, 3 months ago, the answer would have been yes. But now, looking around at this place they'd built, at the people whose lives he'd become part of. "I was thinking I might stick around," he said. "If you'll have me. This place needs a manager, and I'm getting pretty good at it." Evangeline smiled, and it transformed her face, made her look 10 years younger. "I was hoping you'd say that. There's something else too. I've been talking to the girls, and we all agree. When the debt is paid, we want to make you a full partner. 50-50 split. You've earned it. Evangeline, I can't." "Yes, you can. You saved my life, Jack. You saved all our lives. More than that, you gave us hope when we had none. This saloon wouldn't exist without you. Hell, I wouldn't exist without you. So yes, you can accept this. You will accept this." Jack found himself smiling. "Yes, ma'am." "Not ma'am. Evangeline." "Yes, Evangeline." She squeezed his hand, then wheeled away to greet some new arrivals. Jack watched her go, then turned back to his work. There were drinks to pour, money to count, a business to run. He'd come to Redemption Creek as a debt collector, a man who took what people owed and left them with nothing. But somehow, in the process of collecting one debt, he'd found himself paying off another, an older debt, to his sister, to his mother, to the scared kid he'd been who'd watched everything slip away. The Silver Spur wasn't just a saloon anymore. It was proof that second chances existed, that debts could be paid in more than one way, and that sometimes the thing you came to take was actually the thing you needed to give. Outside, the sun was setting over Redemption Creek, painting the sky in shades of copper and gold, and inside the Silver Spur, Jack Calloway poured drinks and listened to the piano and smiled, because for the first time in his life, he was exactly where he belonged.